Welcome back to Momentous Struggle, a Star Wars Shatterpoint podcast. On this week's episode, we have a special guest that's going to join us with talking about list building for both mission packs that are currently available to us. So let's go ahead and jump into it. So as always, I'm joined by Aubrey, but this time we brought in another guest, which is Kenny. How you doing, Kenny?
I am so good. Guys, I am thrilled to be here. I love Momentous Struggle. You guys are the best. Way better than us.
Oh no. We love your podcast as well. I mean, Zion's Finest is always a fun one. That's one of the first ones on my list. As soon as I'm going into work on Monday, it's like, all right, got to put on Zion. So no, definitely love your podcast as well.
Awesome. Well, you guys are awesome. And
Absolutely.
you guys are the ones that inspired us to jump into it. So we love it.
Nice. Well, that I like that. Then that makes me feel pretty good. So yeah, I mean, before we actually go into talking about our games, one of our patrons actually had a question that I wanted to bring up since we were having you on, and they were asking, coming from different backgrounds and different gaming backgrounds, what is something that a different mechanic or something along those lines that you miss from playing that game that you miss in Shatterpoint? Like, for example, you played a lot of Imperial Assault.
Yep.
What's something like that doesn't translate from Imperial Assault that you kind of miss playing?
I will say that the thing that I miss most from Imperial Assault is when you would build a list for Imperial Assault, you would build two lists. You would build your squad, and then you would build a command deck of 15 cards. And it felt like there were a lot of really interesting decisions that you would make in terms of what are each of the units that you are going to bring, and then how will you build your command deck in order to take advantage of those units. So it was just a very rich list building exercise that, I mean, I love list building in Shatterpoint, even especially as we get new models, but I will say that it just isn't the same, right? In terms of the depth isn't there and the breadth really isn't there.
That makes total sense. Yeah, I mean, I know like Aubrey coming from Magic. I think is probably the biggest relation he has to any type of game. So like Aubrey, what for you? What is it that you kind of miss?
Yeah, that is a lot of your decisions are made for you, right? Like if you pick a certain primary, they have a squad point cost, right? And you can
Yep.
only bring units that match the era, that match the squad points. You have to make decisions. Like there's one thing like in Magic, okay, you pick different colors have different strategies, and obviously like what a blue-white deck does is completely different from what a red-black deck does. But there's definitely more opportunity to customize your experience. Whereas with this, even though you have a ton of options, once you've selected like your first two options are pretty much like pick your primaries. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, now you are very limited from that point forward onto what you can and cannot do, which is not a bad thing. But yeah, I'm used to putting in like my spicy 61st card that I just want because I like it. Yeah, that doesn't happen as much here. Like I can't just pick whatever I want. Like I'm not putting like the Dathomirian acolytes with like an all Galactic Republic list. Like
Yeah.
why would I do that? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, like for me, it's I think the missions are not as expansive as I would probably like. I mean, coming from the MCP side where you had like secures and extracts, and I at first I'm like, man, I really wish we had extracts in this game. And the more I thought about it, it's like it just wouldn't work. I don't think in the way that the game is designed. But like having another layer on top of just
Yeah.
having the secures would be kind of interesting. I don't know if they're going to go down that road at some point in time, but for me, that's like I would. I'd like to explore that and see if that's something that's been done. I'm almost positive AMG's probably explored that at some point in time, but they also didn't want to just repackage Shatterpoint as MCP with Star Wars characters too. So I think there was a lot of that tugging, give and take with that.
Yeah, I mean, not having played MCP as much as you guys at all, my sense is that MCP's mission strategy is obviously built upon the figure removal aspect of the game, right? Where in terms
Yeah.
of you've got extracts, you've got secures, but there is a big component of being able to remove your opponent's figures, whereas that doesn't happen in Shatterpoint most of the time. And so the mission pack has to reflect the fact that you're not removing figures. And so how do we make for these dynamic games in which we're not in which figures aren't being removed off of the board, right?
Exactly. Yeah, that's kind of where my thought was. I mean, and that kind of works out that way because like not to go too far into it, but like even if you were to get wounded, or when someone meets their final the total amount of wounds that they can take or whatever, they would drop the objective at that point in time that they were carrying. So I was like, I think you could still make it work.
Yeah.
I just don't know if it would happen. So yeah, but so yeah, but also I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about our games that we had this week. So I'm sure you've gotten plenty of games in as well, Kenny. Have you been playing all day this week?
Yeah, so I have played a few games this week, and always with Luke. I've been
Okay.
playing. I played him with Vader, and I played him with Maul again to test that out. I played with Vader against Curtis, and Curtis was running. Let me think about. I'm gonna have a think for a second as to what he was running. But it was really interesting because so the idea was that I wanted Jedi Luke to be able to take advantage of. Oh, he was also running Vader because he was running Boosh, and he was running. He was doing this really interesting thing where he has Vader as much more of a support piece who is blocking up these units that you wouldn't really think of. So Boosh is a good example. And so I ran Luke box, then Vader with Obi-2. Nope, it was not. I did not have the Luke box. I had Luke, Obi-2, and Bar-2, and then Vader 1, Obi Snips, and Arfs. And so I wanted to see what Vader could do for Luke and for the other pieces because we know how good he is with Obi-2, and I just wanted to see what it could do. And it was just a very bloody game. I mean, you've got two Vaders going against each other, right? Lots of figures. I wounded Dooku.
Yeah.
Dooku comes up and I exposed him with the Arfs, and then Vader one shot him. And that was just it was just a lot of blows, blow for blow. Luke is a monster. He is such a cool figure, and it's been so fun to play him. And there is so much for me to learn, but I have loved every single game I have played with Luke. He's one of my favorite pieces right now.
Nice, nice. Yeah, I know Aubrey had the experience of Vader beating the crap out of Dooku in his
Yeah,
game last night. So
there you go.
Oh man. Man, no, that was so. Wait, just making sure. So you had Vader 1, right?
Yes,
That was beating on
yes.
Dooku. Okay, yeah, I had the experience of Vader 2. So I did not. My week has gone sideways on me entirely. So I didn't actually finish building any of my new boxes. I almost finished Plo Koon, but didn't quite get there. Fine. So I just ran back a list. First, I tried the Dathomirians to just see if that new rules interaction that got clarified really does weaken them. And then the very first combat I got into, I didn't wound a character because I chose to prioritize life drain over
Oh,
coordinated fire.
yeah,
And so I
bummer.
immediately got the feeling of, oh, wow, all right, because they were literally, I left snips on 1, and because I
Oh,
was like, well, I'm gonna life drain. I want a life drain because of whatever had happened in the first interactions, and yep, no, I'm immediately annoyed by the new rules interaction, but so be it, We move
yeah.
on. But the Dooku game, Vader 2 destroyed Dooku
Wow.
through 4 expertise.
Oh
I
my
got
gosh.
4 expertise. I turned 2, what is it? 2 crits to a failure, or what is it? He's a crit to a hit, crit to a failure, or whatever.
no, it
Whatever
was two crit
Dooku's.
to fails.
Yes,
Yeah.
I turned 2
Whew.
crits to failures. I got a bunch of blocks. I got everything you could have wanted, and Vader 2 went, well, I still got like 5 successes. So what are you gonna do
Yeah.
about that?
Oh, that's wild. That is wild.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
Dooku
I
did
ended up
not do
playing.
bad.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
yeah, I had the same exact experience because I played the person that Aubrey got beat up on the like right before that as well. And I was testing out a list that I was not the best. I was playing Ahsoka Jedi No More with General Obi-Wan Kenobi
Okay.
just to just to see how it felt. And like yeah, I'm too much of an aggro player to sit
Yeah.
there and play something of that nature. So it was like I'm gonna give it a run, see how it feels, and I'm like, no, that's not how my style of play. So
Yeah.
yeah, I really just got run over. Same thing like Vader 2, man. And like I think before my opponent, it was Chris, one of our locals that plays in like all of our tournaments and stuff like that. But before he actually refreshed his order deck, I believe Vader activated 4 times.
Oh my
Just
gosh. Oh my gosh.
yeah.
Oh man,
So
that's wild.
yeah, Vader 2 is just. I mean, you can just utilize him like crazy, and I mean, he moves people all over the table. So I think he's an interesting piece to the game. I think he's going to see a lot of play until people really figure out how to sit there and deal with him. Like Vader 1, like once we got more reps against him, we kind of knew how to play against him. I think it's going to be the
Yeah.
same thing with Vader 2.
Yeah. That's very cool.
Yeah. So, well, one thing I wanted to make one announcement before we go ahead and jump into our main topic, which is that this is the last week of our giveaway that we're doing. We are giving the You Cannot Run box. So that's available on our Facebook page. You just have to follow our Facebook, and leave a comment on that post, and you're automatically entered into it. If you are a patron, you do get a bonus entries into that as well. So if you want to get that and help support the channel, you can always be a patron through the Momentous Struggle at Patreon as well. Um, you can join our Discord and get into their Discord's free, but you get into our additional Discord channels for our patron only. You get access to our bonus episodes as well, where we talk more lore than anything else in there. But it's only $1 a month if you want to help support the channel. So we definitely appreciate all of our patrons that definitely support us as well. So yeah, but let's go ahead and jump into this main topic here, which is talking about basically list building with both mission packs in mind. And like the first thing that I kind of wanted to touch on was basically you really don't want to focus on what's different between the mission packs, but what's kind of the same between the mission packs, and what are you focusing on with those things. Because there's if you're looking at, oh, these are the different things, I think you're going to sit there and get too far into the weeds with it. I don't know, what do you think, Kenny?
Yeah, this is such a good prompt and something to think about because when I think about them, I do think about how different they are. But thinking, don't focus on what's different. Focus on if you have to build or play towards being able to play for both. Like, what's your plan? And I think for me that the biggest thing to realize is what you've hinted at, which is that you win by controlling points. And the question is what you're doing with every list. And this is the best thing about Shatterpoint is you're looking at your list and your opponent's list. You're looking at the spread of possible objectives and thinking, where can I apply pressure? Where is my opponent applying pressure? Can I match them for that pressure? Right. So with shifting priorities, I find that a lot of pressure is put into the center because that point is obviously always, I mean, the midline's always active, but the center point, that's where your Dooku goes. That's where your Mama T goes, because from there they can apply a lot of pressure all around the board. Mace is like the same. Mace wants to be like in the middle of the fight. Whereas with something with Sabotage Showdown, what I'm more thinking about is I want to send Dooku off to one direction, and that's going to apply a lot of pressure, and then I can match whatever pressure my opponent is sending to the other side with the rest of my list. So it's very much about knowing where you're strong, where your opponent is strong, and whether or not you think you have a reasonable chance of being able to match them in terms of controlling and flipping points, right? Dooku is very good with one Magna Guard in tow. He can hold a side of the board by himself almost always, right? And so and that works for both mission packs. And so you just got to think about that in terms of which are my units that I'm using to anchor points and where is everyone else going to go, right?
Exactly. Yeah, because ultimately this game is all about controlling those points and maintaining the control of the points whenever you can. So it's finding what strategies you're going to utilize to do that. I mean, so like for you, Aubrey, I mean, like, do you is there something for you that like you focus on more so than on one mission pack than the other when you're doing your building, or anything like that?
I think it's actually just comes down to strategy. On Sabotage Showdown, you're more likely to keep units on the back points. So, really, if you're trying to look for a squad building that is going to lead you to the most success, is you really just want variety. You do not want to be all in on one strategy. Sorry, melee only people, but you want to have characters that want to stay in the back
Yeah.
because can you send them into the midline if necessary? Sure, of course, that's an acceptable strategy, but you want to have characters that can do both. Like
Yeah.
Magna Guards can't do both, right?
Nope.
Right? Like Magna Guards have to go forward. So you need, if you're going to bring Magna Guards, you need something else to complement them. You need to look for those things, and that's and I know we're going to talk about diceless displacement as its own topic here, so I don't want to get into it too much, but that's what I've heard said often as advice is you want to look for, you want to have like a couple of units that are capable of diceless displacement in your list if possible, or at
Yeah.
least diceless reactions, right? Like mind trick. I think of mind trick in this same category, even though it's its own thing and a little unique. But you want to have, you know, your your character that can go and take a point by himself so you can focus on something else. You want characters that can hit hard, and then you want characters that are versatile, and you
Yeah.
just want to look at your squad and say, do I have each of these things? Because if I have too many heavy hitters, well, what happens when you need to be tactical? And
Yeah.
if you have too many range units, well, what are you going to do when you need to get in the thick of things when the objective inevitably changes and you need to go somewhere else? So
Yeah.
you just got to think that way.
Can I make one more point on this?
Yeah, definitely.
So I have played since, oh man, probably August, mostly Dooku plus something in a form of control list. Not really like Dooku Separatist. I've played him with Grievous most often if I'm playing Separatist, but most of the time I've played him with Ahsoka or some kind of control piece because that's what I like to play. Matt, however, has been on the Republic for the entire time. And his theory that he has developed is that what the Republic wants to do is apply a lot of pressure to one side of the map, keep your range figures on the back line because they can apply pressure to the midline, right? That's what Aubrey just said, which is an excellent point. So you've got your clone troopers on the back line applying pressure to the midline through coordinated fire and attacks, and then your Jedi are on the front line. And he will typically say, I'm going to commit to one side, and that's the side I'm going to win, and then, you know, try and slowly gain ground, kind of arcing around his opponent. Now, I that's totally fine. Matt has played a lot of games on the Republic, way more than I have, but I find that I really do not like to concentrate my fire like that. That, I mean, if I've got Mace going a certain way, I don't also want Obi-Wan going that way because Mace is going to apply a lot of pressure, and I want Obi-Wan applying pressure differently, right? So Matt and I have talked about this, and I mean, Matt will obviously has his ideas how he wants to do it, and Matt's a great player, but I really think that for all for both missions, for Shifting Priorities and Sabotage Showdown, rarely do I think my plan is I want to concentrate my firepower in one way. I want just the right amount of firepower that I need in order to hold or do what I'm trying to do in that particular arena of the map. So
Yeah, that's a really interesting take because if you sit there and put all of your eggs into one basket, and I mean,
yeah,
this is a dice game.
yeah,
So if your dice just go south on you at any point in time, now you've put everything on one side of the board, and you might lose the entire side of the board just because your dice are not doing what you want them to do. They're just underperforming this typical, like dice what they're supposed to be doing. So I mean, I understand where it might be working for them at this point in time, but there's going to be those games that might just crumble on them too.
yeah. Great point.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, but
And
that, I mean, that
and
kind
your
of.
dice
Oh, go
does.
ahead.
I was just gonna say your dice doesn't even have to fail. I had multiple instances in the two games that I played last night. Both of us rolled well, but
Mm,
if both of you roll well and you're on defense and they're on offense, where they're rolling more dice than you, so all of the
great
things
point.
being equal, like I mean, I had phenomenal rolls against Vader every time. I cannot blame my dice. Vader just did his thing anyway, and my dice
Yeah,
were fine. So you got to
Yeah.
strategize.
Without a doubt, without a doubt. I mean, yeah, and that kind of, like I said, this you kind of lead it into like what we really wanted to talk to next, which was displacement. Right now is king of the game. We really want
yes,
to be displacing characters, and there's a couple of different ways to do that. I mean, you can displace them, through diceless displacement with multiple shoves on a tree. And I mean, there's also other strategies along those lines of, like you were saying, Kenny, you like to play like more of a control list. There's more of attrition list. I mean, where do we go with that? I mean, what is the main strategies that we're trying to take advantage of, regardless of whatever mission we're playing?
So for me, I am always playing control major. That's like my primary focus is trying to limit what my opponent can do. And then I find I am playing kind of two games of displacement and attrition. And when we had our recent tournament up in Logan, Utah, I ran Vader Dooku. I only had one form of diceless displacement in Django, but my I thought was that I was running Vader. I'm sorry, so I had Vader 1, Dooku, OB2, ARFs, Django, Magnas. So I have got I've got control with Dooku and especially control with OB2 and then obviously with Magnas as well and with Django, right? So those are four pieces that can really limit your opponent's options. And then when necessary, I can play the attrition game because I've got Vader and I can play the displacement game with Django or with my guaranteed shoves from Magnus. And so I think that you always want to have a little bit of everything. If you have I love Ahsoka. I love Ahsoka. But my problem with Ahsoka list is that she really lacks attrition. And so if you're going to bring her, the question is, okay, I'm going to bring Ahsoka. And then where is my damage going to come from? Because I don't want to be behind 3 or 4 wounds going into struggle 3 because I'm playing this hyper control list, right?
No, without a doubt. I mean, like that was kind of similar experience that I had just playing Ahsoka last night. Was I was going into Vader 2, so so Vader 2 would go and wound one of my characters, and then it's like, well, I can move Ahsoka in there. She can do a 5 dice attack into Vader. Is that really gonna matter?
Yeah.
It's like like her. She's not tanky, or not. I shouldn't say tanky. She's not an aggressive piece. She's not an
Yep.
attrition piece. So her going into a big beefy character like Vader is just not going to do anything. It's like, well, maybe I can put a condition on him, and that's about it. It was rough.
Yeah, that feels bad, but you're right.
Yeah, the only thing I can think of as an analogy for those of you who maybe have played MMO games or even just RPGs in general, you really need a balanced team. You need a tank, you need a
Yep.
DPS, you need a healer, you need and of course these aren't perfect analogs. I'm just saying every every unit you bring should have a role and you should know what the role is, and ideally they can function in more than one role, but that's not true of every unit, which is fine. But
Yeah.
you should know why you're bringing everyone. It shouldn't just be well, whatever, this will work out maybe if I think about it, and the dice
Yeah.
do dice things.
Well, yeah, I mean
Yeah.
that's very much why. Like, I mean, that's why Django is so good, is because he has great displacement.
Yep.
He's very good at control with being able to put different conditions on, and he hits pretty hard. I mean,
Yeah.
he hits every piece of what you want, and that's really what you're looking at, is how do I take these pieces and these different strategies, and I take advantage of all of them while I'm playing the game.
Yeah, there's something that we were actually talking about recently because so when we got into the game, so the game released in what, June, and probably in July, August was when Vader Grievous kind of took over our meta. And everyone was playing it or was getting crushed by it. And that is obviously just a hyper attrition list. You've got Vader 1, you've got Grievous, you've got Fifth Brother, you've got Django, you've got OB2, and then you have Magna Guards, right? And everyone's using Vader dice. There are tons of damages going out. That list has fallen off recently because one is we've learned how to play against attrition, and all we've learned how to play against Vader, especially. There's also the premier list building factor that's not if you're going to put all of your eggs in those two baskets, it kind of takes away your other options in a way that probably isn't optimal. But really, what we learned is that it is super good at attrition. I mean, it will be removing figures every single activation, right? In a way that most lists just can't keep up with. But its displacement is coming from Django and then Magna Guards, but really it's not really very displacy, and its control is OB2. And so if your opponent knows how to play around that, they can say, look, I know how to play into your attrition game, and you don't have as much control or displacement as I do, and so you can just kind of get played around. And so while it's still a super strong list, it is very much a one trick pony, and so that has its limitations.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. I mean, that's one of the. I think that's exactly why they fell off, because you're like, well, I'm going to let Vader do his what Vader does,
Yeah.
and then you have to beat me with everything else that you have on the board, which you're probably not going to because you're really relying on your typecast or pigeonholed, I should say, by the different pieces you have to bring with Vader and to make Vader do what Vader's doing, type of a
Yeah.
thing.
Yep. Exactly right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and talk about Mind Trick a little bit, just as a highlight from my games, because I left out one story because I knew we were going to talk about diceless displacement. But Plo Koon, my first experience with Plo Koon was last night. Oh my
Oh
word,
boy.
Plo Koon was very good. Wow.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh man. Plo Koon was bullying my OB2. Bullying him. My
Yeah.
OB2 got force push, like, not in a row, but very quickly back to back thanks to Shatterpoint plus Plo Koon's card. My OB2 spent most of the game in the far left corner, like almost past my deployment line, because Plo Koon
Yeah.
just bullied him into oblivion. So if your only option is OB2 in your list, well, spoilers, everybody, the stormtroopers in my next game, like, I'm used to OB2. Like, if I get OB2 early, I'm like, great, cool, put him on a point. He lives there. He's going to sip his drink. That's what he's going to do for the rest of the game. Not
Well,
anymore. Stormtroopers went, "Oh, hey, hi, Obi-Wan. You're a survivor of Order 66. We're gonna fight you. Oh wait, no, we're not gonna fight you. We're just gonna push you off a point." And I went, "Oh, mind trick, but mind trick. No,
yeah.
no mind trick for me."
Yep. Yep. I love that.
Aubrey did, and it was pretty funny listening to him.
Yeah.
I mean, I think everybody in the store knew how much Aubrey hated Plo Koon last night. It was very entertaining.
Plo Koon
Yeah.
activated
I think the fun.
5 times. 5 times he activated in
Oh.
our game.
See, the thing that's so cool about that, and I think that does such a good job of illustrating how Shatterpoint is just this incredible game, is because OB2. So I think of OB2 as this resource suck for your opponent, where you're going to put him on a point, and you're going to say, look, you can attack him, and most of the time I might not even mind trick if you're going to attack him. His whole purpose is to pull attacks off of these other figures, right? And so what you're doing is and like Aubrey, if I pull OB2 first, I'm like, yes, awesome, send him up, right? And what's interesting is that with force push is a good example, is that force push is a high cost but I think fair way of dealing with something like OB2 or Dooku, where it's like, I am no longer going to make the resource trade that you're wanting me to make in terms of having to make these attacks that got wasted. Instead, I'm going to spend 2 force and send you off into La La Land, right? And I'm like, that's totally fair. That's the fun of the game, is that we're having to make these trades and these resource assessments in terms of thinking, am I getting enough out of this, right? And I think why OB2 is so good is because you have to force push him in order to send. You cannot have him be in that bubble he wants to be in so he can protect everybody. So
Very, very accurate. Very accurate. Yeah, I mean, I guess that kind of like leads into when we are actually putting together our list for the game or for whatever game we're going to be playing. Like when we're going to our game night or anything, how are we building our list? I mean, what is how many how many attrition pieces are we taking? How many control pieces? I mean, you kind of touched on it a little bit, Kenny, but it's like what is it that you're really looking to do, and like how many of each particular type of piece are you looking to bring?
yeah, so I think that if you're doing the Dooku box, you're kind of cheating on this, because if you bring the Dooku box, you have attrition, control, and displacement all in that box, right?
Right.
And then you can just say, well, then what else do I want to play, right? It's like I've
Mm-hmm.
got all of the things I need. So now I can play Ahsoka, right? I can play Ahsoka, Obi-2, and Mandos as like hyper control, or I can play Vader and Vader, Snips, Arfs, and I can play a little bit more aggro, a little bit more attrition. Now, if you're not running the Dooku box, then I think you actually have to make some harder decisions, right? In terms of thinking, okay, I don't think you need to have 2 forms of diceless displacement in every list. I think what you need is 1 form of diceless displacement, and then strong positioning, repositioning in your attacks from other units. So Clan Krees don't have. I think Clan Krees are an awesome unit. They don't have diceless displacement, but they have really solid pin push, push, right? So I think that it's like Aubrey said, and I know it sounds kind of lame to just be saying, oh, it's a balance, but it really is a balance. I think if you don't have a little bit of diceless displacement, if you don't have a little bit of attrition, if you don't have a little bit of control, there will be points of the game in which you suffer. If you don't have attrition in struggle 3, you will be behind because your opponent will have been doing a lot of damage to you that you will have not been reciprocating, right? Whereas control and displacement are, those are applicable at all points of the game, but yeah, attrition is really about being able to have a more gas in the tank for struggle 3. So, you know, that's just something I think about in terms of I think you need to think about all of these categories for every single list that you bring if you want it to be competitive. If you just want to, have fun, go have fun. But if you're thinking, no, I want to see if this works, then you want to be looking for units like Maul. You want to be looking. I mean, Maul is a great example because Maul is attrition, control, and displacement. He's just an incredible figure. Momentous is the same way, right? So
Oh yeah, no, I mean that's I think like we both Aubrey and I are pretty heavy into the mom and Maul
yeah,
train there, like playing the two of them together, and you can really just kind of season to taste with them. Like throw
exactly.
in Obi-2, throw in your Django, and then whatever secondary or supporting units you want with them. So it's I think that's really kind of like finding those primaries that are going to work for you and are going to accomplish that. I mean, because like you said, Maul does a lot of those things. If you're going to bring uh, just the Dooku box, that does a lot of things. And I mean, that's why that's the best box in the game right now.
Exactly right.
Yeah. When I talk to people and they're like, well, if I'm just gonna pick up a couple of boxes because they're not interested in the core set or they're not interested in things, and they ask me, well, if I'm just gonna pick up 2 boxes to play and they don't like Ewoks.
Yeah,
Like that's my first
yeah,
option is actually, well, Ewoks are going to be fun. Like you'll like Ewoks. But yeah,
yeah.
if they're a little more competitive, a little more like, hey, I want to do death murder but like in a more competitive fashion, I pretty much say Dooku Grievous. Just get Dooku Grievous. Like you get all the separatist
Yep.
stuff, you get all the fun like but then I tell them, I'm like, but also you could just take the Dooku box and then pick your other favorite thing. Like that's fine. Just take the Dooku box and whatever else you like. But if you want to do well, like the Dooku box has everything you need.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of touches on something that I think we're like a lot of people struggle with. I think with this game is they were a lot of people were focused on building the theme, like trying to sit there and build like a very
Yes.
cohesive themed team. And if you're going to sit there and try and build a team that's going to sit there and work in like both mission packs and is going to give you all the different things that you want, you can't lean into that theme side of it as much as I think some people want to, just because they're so used to it. I mean, you come from most miniature games like MCP, you're going to be building around an affiliation. If you're coming from Warhammer, you are building around that particular set of whatever your codex you're bringing to the game. So people like in the miniature gaming world are so used to building around a theme of some sort, and you just don't have to do that here. And it's like a hard thing to break for miniature gamers.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's absolutely right. But for me, I think that the draw of Shatterpoint obviously is that it's a Star Wars game, and I understand people wanting to play for theme. But what I tell people who are new to the game or wanting to enjoy the game more is I want you to think, what is the one unit you want to play? And then what is a list that you can build around that unit? And a lot of times, unfortunately, it might be that it's the Dooku boxes goes with them, but not always, right? And it's more like, do you want to run Ahsoka? Okay, if you're going to want to run Ahsoka, there are a few choices that you got to make, but you just got to know that you need to lean pretty heavily that your other units are able to do damage, right? And so you can play, I mean, almost every figure in Shatterpoint is viable to play. And honestly, probably every figure is viable, right? Some units are
Yeah.
stronger than others, but everything is viable. And then the question is, okay, so you've got your thing that you want to do. You want to test that out. Okay, so think honestly about what that unit needs in order to perform well. We had a list building exercise where we're like, what's everything's best list? And then it was what's everything's best list that doesn't have Dooku, right? And that makes you have some really interesting choices, right? Where you're like, okay, what what is Obi-Wan, what's his best list? Who is his best companion, right? And we had our thoughts, but then what's super interesting is that Tom Harper for the Space Slugs with in Australia, he runs Anakin Obi-Wan, which I would never have thought would be the ideal pairing at this point in the metagame, but he makes it work, right?
Yeah. I mean, so I guess that would leads to kind of a question. I mean, for maybe for you, Aubrey, is if you were to sit there and build a list, not including Dooku in your list, that was able to sit there and focus on both, and and don't cheat and just say Mother Maul, because I know that's what you're going to try and do to me here. Is what would you be looking at if you couldn't have anything from the Dooku box?
Hey,
Caught you off
I
guard
can't
here.
have the
Yes!
Dooku box, and I can't have Mother Maul. What are these restrictions?
I'll let you
Like,
have
come
Mother
on,
Maul, because
like,
but you can't have
no.
I'll let you have it.
So I mean, Mother Talzin does have a higher cost to her because manipulating hand, if you don't get on her tree, that is a cost. It's a great ability. It's phenomenal. It's diceless displacement, but it feels more expensive because it's not exactly the same as force push. Like force push feels backbreaking every time it happens, either via force or whatever. Manipulating hand is a dash, which is a little bit less. I mean, it's good. I'm not trying to say it's not good, but Maul is actually my answer. If you want everything, Maul does aggro, he does control, he can be a tech piece. Like Maul is very much the epitome of, if you want a unit that is versatile but not necessarily the most powerful, because he has an opportunity cost. Maul is one of the units that is most likely to leave the table out of, like, even your supports. Like, usually we think of supports as being the squishiest and they tend to leave the table, but I mean, I've lost Maul off the table more than I've lost Magna Guards, for
Yeah.
instance. So I mean, Maul goes off the table pretty easy. You have to manage his durability very closely if you're going to keep him on the table. In fact, it took me a minute to learn that. Like I learned, oh, no, you want to heal Maul as much as you can because he's gonna take damage. Because the first time you pull somebody and then beat them with the double bladed lightsaber, they remember that. Your opponent remembers that. So you got to be careful.
Yeah.
Got to be careful.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. I mean, so I mean, definitely that's a good way to go. I mean, looking at the team that I played against last night, I mean, it was interesting because it was Vader 1 with his box, Stormtrooper, Sergeant, and Stormtroopers, and then Grand Inquisitor with Third Sister and Fifth Brother. And it actually, if you bring fourth or Fifth Brother along with Third Sister with Riva, you have a pretty good displacement in there because he's able to do his enfeeble, which allows her to get her shoves off. I mean, it was very interesting how that played out. So I mean, there are definitely ways to build teams that are going to be able to do everything that you want them to do. And like to your point that you were making earlier, Kenny, that every unit in this game is viable. It's just a matter
Yeah.
of playing them properly and utilizing them and their kits to the fullest extent that they can. Oh, I think
Yeah.
Aubrey wants to say something.
Is Cody viable though?
Oh, okay. All right. Fair.
Come
Fair.
on, come on.
Yeah, Cody and your favorite, the 501st, your favorite punching bag, the 501st are probably not viable either.
The 501st should be good. They're the 501st. Like, it's iconic.
It's so easy, Kenny. All I have to do is say 501st, and it just sends them in a complete downward spiral. It's too easy, Kenny.
Aubrey gets mad about the lore. He's not wrong though. I mean, they should be better. And to this point, this was why I played Mandos. So I played the whole Mando spread and then just various primaries for the first few months of the game. And I totally misunderstood how they were supposed to work in terms of what their strengths were. I'm like, oh, well, Bo, she's going to be super tanky. So I'm just going to throw her into the middle of the fight with the soups and then have this and, have Saxon and the Clan Kreese in the back blasting away. But it's like, well, they're not that tanky, right? And so what Bo is really good at, she's kind of like Obi-2, where with her bubble and with the awesome defensive expertise that the Mandos have, what you're more doing is you want to put them in a place where your opponent can't really deal with them, because your opponent, you don't want to put them into the middle. You want to put them in a place where if your opponent is going to get rid of them, your opponent's going to have to commit a lot of resources to do it, right? They're not super tanky, but learning that, I'm like, oh, I thought Bo was the best secondary in the game. I was like, oh, she's not that good. And that makes me sad because I love Bo. But then I'm like, oh no, she's awesome. You just have to know what she's meant to do and what she can't do, right?
Yeah, very very much so. I mean, that's I think the biggest piece of this game is learning the nuance of each individual character and their kit.
Yep.
And I think positioning is so important in this game that people forget that, and it's like they you really have to think about where you're placing somebody and during your entire movement and everything like that, because that's coming into, I think, just how you play each, no matter what struggle you're playing, how you place your characters and tactically placing them is so important to this game, and
Yep.
how the outcomes are going to happen. Like, are they in a position where they can be shoved, or is your placement going to put them in a position to where it's going to be difficult for them to shove you properly, shove them in
Yeah.
a way that's going to be advantageous for them? So there's a lot more thinking that goes on in this game that I think a lot of people realize when they first jump into it.
Oh yeah. 100%.
Yeah, if to go back to my first league game with Sam, Sam did an excellent job. This isn't just defensive; this is also offensive. Nearly every single attack that Sam did, she had a coordinated fire on
Yeah.
every time between, because she went down a point because she was playing Plo General Obi-Wan, so Obi-Wan. And at first I was like, like, there's a little bit of anti-synergy, maybe I can break this apart. No, there were, because she played down a point, she played ARFs, and then it was just Plo's box. So it was Snips, yeah, General Obi-Wan, Snips, ARFs playing down a point.
Yep.
I was exposed or strained nearly every attack. She
Yeah.
did a great job of, she kept her clones in the back because we were on Sabotage Showdown. The clones were just dealing out condition. You get a condition, and you get a condition, and you get a condition, and I'm like, oh, this is starting to add up. Like those exposes and even the strain. I was like, okay, all right. So yeah, so even offensively, this matters too. Like she did it again. Great job of utilizing the clone. Like this was the first time where I was like, wow, the the clones are doing work here. Like, okay, all right, here we go. Plo is the savior of the Republic, I think.
Yeah.
Just with his whole kit.
Yep.
It's very unfortunate that he came out so late in this game. I wish if he would have come out a little bit earlier, I think there probably would have been a little bit more love for the Republic for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, I don't know. I mean, that kind of covers everything that we were going to talk about. I mean, for this episode. So, Kenny, tell everybody out there where they can find you and what they can do, because I'm sure everybody wants to join your Slack for sure.
Yeah, yeah. So what
Mm-hmm.
yeah, of course. So we've got a podcast, Zion's Finest podcast, that Todd referenced earlier, and we are on the same schedule as Momentous Struggle. We release every week on Monday, and we also have a Slack, which is like Discord, that we would love for you to join. It's a lot smaller than Discord. We've got 160 people on the Slack for the Shatterpoint stuff, which is totally fine. I mean, we have tried to make it a particular kind of pretty tight knit community, and there's maybe 50 or 60 active users, which is awesome. I mean, we have a lot of fun with it. If you sign up for the Slack, we'll send you a promo, a alt art, a Dooku Obi-Wan alt art, and we have a lot of fun with that. So that's where you can find us.
Nice. Yep, I'm definitely on the Slack. I like getting into the conversations that you guys have there. I'm actually in your board game, and you're talking about food channels as well, just to sit there and
Oh,
see
awesome.
see all the food that people are making and everything like
Yeah.
that. So it's pretty cool to sit there and see all the other stuff. And I mean, like that was, I think, whenever I saw you and your crew at LVO, it seemed like you guys were always just playing board games. You were like like that was like you just traveled to Vegas to play board games. It felt like.
Oh yeah. I mean, for us, so what happened? We were originally founded as the whole Zion's Finest thing came from, we were all playing Imperial Assault. And for those of you who might or might not know, Imperial Assault was a Star Wars skirmish game, miniatures game, kind of, that was it released roughly contemporaneously with X-Wing. It got great support for a few years, and then FFG kind of let it die on the vine. So when it died, we still had this huge. I mean, our Slack for Imperial Assault was kind of one of the main community bastions there. So we had 400 people for
Wow.
Imperial Assault on the Slack. So when Imperial Assault went away, we were all like, well, what are we going to do? And we kind of just ended up, I mean, a lot of people played X-Wing, a lot of people played Destiny. But we all just kind of hung together. And so, we all play board games. Is we play a lot of board games. And so it's just mostly a community hangout place. Like Todd said, there's a Talking About Food channel where a lot of people who are not active in any other part of the Slack are there to talk about food, right? So it's just a really fun community.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, it seems like a very fun community to be a part of. So no, it's like I definitely like just like jumping in the Slack. Cause man, I haven't been in the Slack in a day or so. Let me jump in
Yeah,
there, see what's going on, and like just
yeah,
see all the conversations. It's great.
yeah. We have a lot of fun. We love it.
Well, it was awesome to have you. We were really excited to sit there and have you on the podcast and joining us. I think I told you when I saw you in Vegas, I was like, oh man, it's like Kenny, I kind of want to have you on so we can just sit there and talk and
Yeah,
everything like that. Because I think we hit it off pretty well right from the start anyway. So I was like, yeah, I like this dude. I want to keep him. I want to get him on the show. So I
yeah.
thank you for very much for coming on.
Well, you guys are, I can't say it enough how awesome you guys are in terms of both your community building. I mean, obviously, your podcast is awesome, but just your presence in the community is so good. It's good to know that there are people like you two who are building the community in Arizona, but also just building the community everywhere. It really helps me have a lot of confidence that Shatterpoint's in a great place with you guys. So, you guys are awesome.
I mean, and the same to you. I mean, like you're trying to sit there and have your Sci-Fi Invitational, like, and hoping people come from outside of the
Yeah.
state of Utah to sit there and come to your event that you're having out there. Because what is the dates of the Sci-Fi Invitational?
So what it is, it's May 18th, and I will put in one plug for it here because what
That's
we're
fine.
doing is we're running it as kind of I want people can think of it as like a store champ regional tournament. And the reason I'm saying that is because we are doing a lot of prize support. We've got these custom Vader 1, Luke Vader 2, Luke alt arts. Scott has painted an alt sculpt of Luke and an alt sculpt of Vader that we're going to be giving away. We've got custom tokens and acrylic card holders. I mean, we tried to go all out for this tournament, so it'll be really fun. I think we're going to be capped at 24 players, and
Okay.
we're coming up on it. So if you want to join, obviously reach out to us on the Slack. We'll send you the long chains link so you can register. But it's going to be a really fun tournament.
Yeah, I mean, listening to you talk about it sounds really exciting. So I was super excited for that. I'm going to throw the invitation out there for you. You don't have to, but if you want to stay on, we're going to be having for our bonus episode. You can definitely hang out and talk with us a little bit of lore. I haven't even told you what movie we're talking about, but if you want to hang out and do it, I'll let you
Oh,
know. So
That,
yeah,
that's just the plug for the Patreon. You only get
yeah.
to hear the bonus episode if you're on the Patreon. So if
Well,
you want to keep listening to us talk about Star Wars, you have to go onto the Patreon. It's a whole
but
dollar. I mean, you probably got $1 in your socks or something.
well, I'm going to join the Patreon, and I would love to listen to you guys talk about this stuff. So
awesome,
let's
awesome.
let's go.
Awesome. Well, I do want to thank all of our listeners for tuning in and listening to us as well. If you're watching us on YouTube, go ahead and like, subscribe, and leave us a comment. Let you know what you think. But other than that, again, thanks again for listening, and may the force be with you.
May the force be with you.